Speaking of expensive seasons, though, Brooklyn Nets. I mean, this one feels easy because ultimately this roster is so ridiculously expensive already that you're just looking for veterans who are going to sign cheap and fill in the cracks. And all I want out of this NBA offseason, now that we've gone through this exercise, is to watch Nicholas Claxton and Nerlens Noel share the floor. That's all I want.
Wait, what? Run that by me one more time. Run it back, please.
I want to see Nicholas Claxton and Nerlens Noel on the floor at the same time, wreaking defensive havoc, while Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving do all of the scoring. The switchability, the impact on passing lanes, the rim protection, that would be so fun.
I don't know whether to be disgusted or tantalized because it's so off the wall to do that.
You're welcome.
I think they could. My guess would be, they're in this position where they have the mini mid-level. Does that get you both Blake Griffin and Jeff Green back, do you think? Or would you guess that one of them is gone?
I think Jeff Green's gone. I think he's played well enough that I think someone's going to throw him more money. Like, he was a legitimately impactful player, both with the big three available, however short that duration was, and in some of their stead.
Yeah, they do have Bruce Brown that they'll have the ability to re-sign. I think one of Green or Griffin will be back. I actually thought it was more likely to be Green, to be honest with you, but he might be in higher demand than Griffin at this point. Who knows? And both of those guys, Brown and Green, were just so important to the way that they were just running their center rotation. I'm wondering if they can get someone else. Then, if you think you're gonna lose Jeff Green and or Bruce Brown, is there like a cheap? He's not a big, but a bigger wing who will give you some super small minutes at the 5. And immediately I'm drawn to, if Otto Porter needs to rehabilitate his value. I apologize, I can't speak tonight. Or Nicholas Batum. And I don't know why necessarily he'd want to leave the Clippers after the season he had, but I do think the Nets can promise him like a semi-prominent role compared to the Clippers. Not a more prominent one, but like if Nicholas Batum went to Utah, like a lot of people, including us, talked about, he's not guaranteed any sort of minutes there. There's a reality or a world in which he could be a part of Brooklyn's closing lineup. The two things that I'm wondering about this team, they're more interesting from a trade perspective for me because they have DeAndre Jordan, who's apparently available. I guess KD and Kyrie getting him that 4-year mid-level deal was enough. They can trade him now. He apparently is available, so I don't think he's an asset to anyone, but his salary at $10 million a year that helps move some that can help acquire back some money. And then also, I think Spencer Dinwiddie ends up getting signed and traded, was one of my predictions for the offseason. I don't know where you land on that, but those are mechanisms they could use to get back a player that a team this expensive really otherwise wouldn't have access to.
I agree with you. I would be shocked if Dinwiddie is back, just because as talented as he is, they don't have as much use for him as another team is going to. I have no idea what they'll be able to turn him into. And I think that's kind of the theme of this whole Brooklyn offseason, which is we have limited resources. We have 3 superstars who are all capable of carrying an offense. Let's get the best player we can. Like, just adopt the true best player available mentality. You don't really need to fill a certain archetype because you have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden.
Yeah,
and that's really why I initially went to Nerlens Noel, because ultimately, like, you do need more defense. I think that has been demonstrated pretty convincingly, and he's probably the most impactful low money potential defensive acquisition on the market. And I do think that he works with Claxton. I do think he works as the lone big with some of these smaller lineups. He's not going to play a lot of minutes, which is probably beneficial because you do want to be running a lot of smaller lineups out with this roster construction. He makes sense on basically every level for me, even if it is a little bit off the wall.
The 2 sign and trade ideas I had for Dinwiddie, I think this one's pretty standard, is if you sent him to LA for the Lakers for number 22 and Kuzma. I think, the Nets don't need first round picks, but then all of a sudden you have 2 first round prospects. What can you turn those into? And I think Kuzma he's turned into
more of a defensive than an offensive player.
That's what I was going to say, more valuable defensive than an offensive player. And there's a chance
who would have thought that
there's a chance that with the space that all of Brooklyn shot creators could generate, that we see his catch and shoot threes go through the roof, and that it's okay. I actually think one of the complaints from the Lakers end of the spectrum is that he has never been that secondary creator that he was as a rookie, where he was like one of the top 5 most efficient isolation players in the league that year. In Brooklyn, you almost want that. And so that would be a good fit. The other one is a little bit more off the walls, but let's say Dallas wants to have their cake and eat it too. They want to keep Tim Hardaway Jr., but still make a significant free agency acquisition. They don't get Conley, they don't get Lowry. A sign and trade of Dinwiddie to Dallas for if Josh Richardson opts in and Maxi Kleber was something that I thought about.
Kleber would be a fun fit there for sure. I like that.
But I like Kleber and Josh Richardson. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, I wonder if Dallas would be like, no way on Kleber, because that's how important he's become to the way that they play.
That also would not surprise me. I think Cuban in particular really seems to like him.
I feel like that's our cue to move on to Charlotte at that point.
There was actually no subtext intended there.
Okay. But let's move on to Charlotte.
I promise. Like, legitimately, I know this from a few years back because Cuban did actually retweet a few NBA math things that were highlighting how good Kleber was in a small role as a rookie.